we are beginning the NFC South with the Carolina Panthers. And I am getting the vibe from the Carolina Panthers that they're willing to kind of allow this season to be a little bit of a losing one. Let's just put it that way. I get the sense that Carolina, at this point, they know that they're probably not going to get Deshaun Watson. They've tried to find solutions at quarterback like Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Darnold. And I almost feel like they have given up trading for a quarterback. They have given up signing a quarterback. They want to be able to be in a spot in the draft, high in the draft, to pick a quarterback of their choice. And that is kind of the direction I see them going. It's not to say that they cannot be competitive if they want to, but I almost get the sense that they've tried that last year and they're going to have to kind of go back to the basics and sort of rebuild. So, starting with the offense, obviously, quarterback is a huge question. You could keep Sam Darnold for this season and give him one more year, given his contract. You could use him as the bridge option this season to get a higher pick and to get a quarterback for next year. You could also use PJ Walker as that as well. If they want to get somebody, they could go and they could trade for Garoppolo if they want. I think that would work. They could trade for Minshew. They could sign Mariota. They could sign Winston. I don't think Winston would really go there, but they could sign Winston. They could sign Bridgewater back. I mean, they could do that. They have familiarity with him. I feel like I would, if that's really what you're looking at, just keep Sam Darnold for one more year and just run it out with Sam Darnold. I get it. It's going to look bad, but if you know you're not going to be competitive this year, like, just go with Sam Darnold. Like, that's honestly my opinion on it. DJ Moore is the number one receiver. Terrace Marshall Jr. could be a nice number two developing. I think he's got a lot of skills. Robbie Anderson could be on his way out. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded Robbie Anderson, but they did pay him, right? So I don't quite know, but he doesn't really fit in terms of a rebuild. He's a little bit older. He's getting around that 30 mark, so it wouldn't make sense for him to stick around through a rebuild sort of thing. But what they definitely need to think about rebuilding is an offensive line. Because Cameron Irving, Pat Elflein, they paid these guys a bunch of money. They were terrible decisions at the moment, and those guys stunk it up. Brady Christensen, they drafted. Not sure if he's going to be an answer in the third round last year. But at least you have Taylor Moton. At least you got that guy. He's good at right tackle. Everybody else stinks. Matt Paredes is gone. John Miller is going to be gone. I guess you've got to play Pat Elflein and Cameron Irving because of their contracts, but I don't know. Maybe you could get away with that. Maybe you could move off of that. Maybe you could cut that. Maybe you could restructure that. I'm not sure. But you need to build the offensive line. And when you look at the cap space, I mean, they have enough cap to sign at least one offensive lineman. So maybe they go with Brandon Scherf at guard, or they'll go with James Daniels at guard, who's a little bit younger. They could go Ryan Jensen center if they want. They've got enough money to make those type of moves. If it was me, I'd be doing whatever I could to get off of Pat Elflein and Cameron Irving as my left tackle and left guard. And I'd be probably looking to draft a couple offensive linemen. Tight end position, I wouldn't be terribly worried about that right now. Tommy Tremble's fine. I think they like him in the building. Christian McCaffrey, I would like to trade him if I could and get, a pick back and get that cap space back maybe. I think you could probably entice a contender to take on McCaffrey and get a pick, maybe even a first, dare I say. But he is also still pretty young, I think. He's like he's like 27. So he is in his prime. The problem has been health, which is always the problem with paying running backs, right? So it depends if they want to keep him around there, but there have been rumors about trading him. And I'm sure a contender would love to have him. Defensively, Brian Burns is an absolute monster. Derek Brown is going to be a monster. Morgan Fox is solid. Yetur Gross-Matos has got upside still, I believe. But Daquan Jones is probably gone. I think your D-line is fine. So your D-line, I think he's going to be 26 this year, Durkant, or maybe 27. I'm not sure, but because I think he's in 1995, I think. Daquan Jones is going to be gone. So I think you just look to continue the youth movement on the defensive line. But the biggest, most important thing is re-signing Hassan Reddick. I don't think you can not re-sign Hassan Reddick. Because I feel like if you have Brian Burns, Shaq Thompson in the middle, Hassan Reddick, Derek Brown in the middle, like that's a great front seven. I don't care who else you have. Like, let Morgan Fox just take on a bigger role with Daquan Jones leaving, whatever. You find another run stuffer, whatever you want to do, like a veteran like Daquan Jones, that's fine. But you got Shaq Thompson in the middle, Reddick and Burns on the edge, Derek Brown on the interior defensive line, and then you've got safety Jeremy Chin, corner JC Horn. Now, you might not have the other corners, like I don't think Gilmore is going to come back. It doesn't make sense for him to come back. You took a chance on CJ Henderson. Maybe he develops into your number 2 corner. I was very high on him in the draft. So maybe you go into the season next year with Henderson on the perimeter and Horn on the perimeter, and then maybe you find a nickel corner cheap option or you draft one. But I think, there's a lot of upside and youth on this defense, and this defense could still be very good next year. But the most important thing here is re-signing Hassan Reddick. Also, Jermaine Carter is a good player, and if you could re-sign him, that would be nice. But you let Daquan Jones go, you let Dante Jackson leave, Justin Burris can go, Gilmore, let him go, and then bring back Reddick, bring back Carter, and continue to get young on this defense. And then offensively, if you can sign an offensive lineman, it would be nice. But you might have to look to the draft and I would just roll with Sam Darnold. Again, I would just roll with Sam Darnold, stink it up this year. Go whatever it is, 4 or 5 wins. Your defense is probably going to win you more games than you would want. And then try to get a quarterback next year through the draft or something. I think that's the way to go. So continue to build the roster around the quarterback and then get that quarterback next year through your offensive line, through your defense. Maybe you move off Robbie Anderson if the contract's workable, but I'm not sure if it is. So that's the Carolina Panthers. The Atlanta Falcons. The Ultra Atlanta Falcons. They're up next on the list. And Atlanta is a football team that's in a very awkward spot because their roster is not very strong, but they have a quarterback that basically wants to win now because he's getting up there in age. So you have to wonder how much time left Matt Ryan has as the starter for the Atlanta Falcons. Running back, Cordell Patterson, I think you'd like to have him back as long as you don't break the bank for him. Calvin Ridley, it looks like he wants out, and it looks like you're going to get a first or a second round pick for him. I wouldn't trade him unless I got a first round pick. Although I think that the whole off the field stuff and the fact that he wants to leave is probably moving his price down to a second rounder, which sucks, but he's definitely worth more than a first, honestly, given his age and given his ability. So that sucks because it would have been really nice to have Ridley and Pitts as your number 1 and your number 2 moving forward for your future quarterback, but it doesn't appear that's going to be the case. Offensive line isn't as bad as I thought it was. Jake Matthews can still play. Jalen Mayfield is a good run blocker. Jalen Mayfield, he's still young. I think, he was drafted last year. So was Hennessy 2 years ago. So you've got a lot of recent draft picks. And Mayfield, he was fine. I'd give him another year to start. I think Hennessy graded as number 7 center in the NFL from PFF. He does struggle in pass protection, but run blocking wise, he's pretty strong. And in Arthur Smith's system, I think that's fine. Chris Lindstrom's good, and Caleb McGarry could definitely use an upgrade. I think if I was looking to upgrade any of the offensive lineman spots, it'd be right tackle, because it doesn't look like McGarry is going to be there much longer. But Kyle Pitts is your tight end, who's not really a tight end, but maybe you look for an inline tight end to partner with Kyle Pitts. You could use a backup running back because I think Mike Davis is going to be cut, but that could come through the draft. So I think the offense, it would be nice to have Russell Gage back. I think you need a receiver, and that should be probably in the draft. And it's probably going to come with the pick that you get for Calvin Ridley. But you need a number 1 and probably even a number 2 as well. I don't think it would be a terrible thing if Russell Gage was your number 2, because Kyle Pitts is like a number 1 as well, right? So defensively, defense needs a lot of work. I thought Dean Pease did a good job last year. At least you finally have a number 1 corner with A.J. Terrell. At least you finally have him. So you've got a number 1 corner. I would bring Isaiah Oliver back as your nickel corner. I thought he looked good before he got hurt. And then perimeter corner. How much money does Atlanta have? See, they're in a negative situation as well. So you're probably looking maybe to the draft for corner or just a 1-year rental option for the opposite corner spot, kind of like Fabian Moreau was a year ago. Safety, I think you're going to roll with the young duo of Hawkins and Grant. Now, they're not fantastic, but you can find what you have there, or you can find out what you have there, and I think both players actually impressed me last year. Deion Jones is going to be interesting to see if he remains on the team, given his contract, and his scheme fit isn't exactly ideal. So he could maybe be traded to a linebacker-needy team. Let's just say like a team that values linebackers that doesn't really have one. Maybe the Jets, somebody like that. And then it would be nice to keep Oluokun, but I could see you going with more beef at the linebacker position. Maybe like somebody like Rashaan Evans, who used to play for the Titans with Dean Pease. Michael Walker's decent as well. You need a difference-making pass rusher, though. Like, if I was to spend money anywhere on this team, it would be for a pass rusher. Absolutely. Because I think your defense could get so much better if you had an edge rusher to pair with Grady Jarrett. Like, absolutely, that would be the place to spend your money. If I had one place to pick, it would be that position. And I feel like somebody like Harold Landry or Hassan Reddick or those guys would be perfect and make sense to me. Or Emmanuel Ogbah too. Those three guys, I'd be trying to land one of those guys. But I think Atlanta's going to go through one more transitional year before they kind of find themselves in 2 years from now. The only problem is going to be that Matt Ryan is probably going to be gone by then. Maybe you could... See, I would trade Matt Ryan if I was Atlanta, but I don't know if they're going to be able to, given that his contract is kind of difficult to deal with. He's not quite worth his contract at this point. And he's older, and he doesn't really fit the vibe of this team and where you want to go with this team. So that's the unfortunate part. But that's the Atlanta Falcons. Edge rusher, wide receiver, and get Patterson back. There you go. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the final team in the... Or no, not the final team in the NFC South, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Super Bowl champs 2 seasons ago, and now they lose Tom Brady. 2 seasons with Tom Brady was quite an experience and a lot of winning. But I do think you're in a little bit of a transitional period from Tom Brady to the next quarterback, as well as Ali Marpet retires. Ryan Jensen's a free agent. Gronk could leave. Probably will leave. Leonard Fournette could leave. Obviously, JPP will probably be gone. Ndamukong Suh could leave. Carlton Davis is a free agent. Jordan Whitehead is a free agent. There are a lot of key players that were on this Super Bowl team and this era of Bucs football that could be on their way out. Now, I will say, the front office with Jason Light, very good GM, and I do think he'll be able to rebuild this team. The first and foremost is going to be who's the quarterback. Is it Blaine Gabbert? Is it Kyle Trask? Or is it somebody outside the building? I don't love the fit of Jimmy Garoppolo as much as it's been thrown out there. I don't think it makes any sense It's a downfield passing attack. Jimmy is not a good downfield passer. I would cross him off the list. If you want to go with somebody with high upside from a free agent, it would be Mitchell Trubisky, or it's tough to say. Really, the one that's standing out in my head is like Wentz or Winston, and you've experienced Winston before, so it doesn't feel like a free agent is going to be high on priority. Wentz would be a trade. The draft is kind of weak. So do you go with a game manager? Like, I heard they were interested in Teddy Bridgewater a couple years ago, but he doesn't really have the arm. I think Wentz makes sense. Offensively, though, I think you try to retain Ryan Jensen and Alex Kappa if you can, because Ali Marpet has left. It's going to do so much damage to your offensive line. Aaron Stinney will be cheap, and I think a starter for you next year. Deshaun Watson, I mean, maybe. It would be, I don't know his situation right now. It would work. I don't know if I don't know when he's going to get traded. Like, I don't know if he's going to be the quarterback this year, next year, or whatever. But they might be in the market for him for sure. Russell Wilson, potentially. I mean, those two guys would be amazing. If they could do that, I would do that for sure. I wouldn't be looking to go young at quarterback if I didn't have to, right? I don't think this team is too far away in this conference from being still very competitive, but they're definitely not as good as they were. So that's the tough thing. Like, Ali Marpet leaving definitely hurts a lot. Now, Tristan Wirfs, I think, is going to be a Hall of Famer at right tackle. Donovan Smith's a capable left tackle. Mike Evans is still playing very well, and Chris Godwin, obviously, is a free agent. You would love to keep that duo together of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. If Chris Godwin leaves, wide receiver becomes an absolutely huge need, and that becomes something that you draft. I don't think they're going to probably go for a free agent unless it's like a lower key name there, because they don't have anybody behind Mike Evans if Chris Godwin leaves. Because unless Jalen Darden, he could maybe develop into your slot receiver, but he's very raw. Tyler Johnson, I don't think is it. Scotty Miller is not it. Like, those guys didn't play well at all last year. Rashad Perryman, you could bring back, fine, but he's like a number 4 receiver, right? Your tight end position might have a completely restructure, because OJ Howard's going to be gone. Gronk is probably going to be gone. Maybe Cam Brate's your starting tight end next year, which I think's fine. I mean, you could draft one if you want. Before Gronk, they weren't heavily utilizing tight ends. The running back position, it would be nice to have Fournette back, but I think only if you've got the quarterback answered. If you don't have quarterback answered, don't re-sign Fournette. Rojo's probably going to be gone. Gio's going to be gone. And the only other guy you have on your roster is Vaughn. So maybe you look to draft a running back in the middle rounds to pair with Vaughn, or look for a cheaper alternative to Leonard Fournette in free agency. So looking at some of the running backs, Fournette, you could go with someone like Rashad Penny. Or who else? That would make sense to me. Rashad Penny does. Chase Edmonds, maybe, if you want like a pass catching guy. He's younger though, at least. But you would probably draft somebody, because I don't think they were in love with Rojo, and I think Fournette would be the only running back that they do sign there. It does feel like Fournette wants to come back. Defensively, Sue would be a guy that I would move on from, just because he's older. Steve McLennan, same thing. William Golston, I think you should try to keep, but I don't know if he'll be back either, because he's also older. But at least you have Vita Vea, and I think Nunez Roches is pretty good too. So those two guys in the inside as your 1-2 isn't terrible. You could use depth there though, and there's lots of depth options. You maybe just get a little bit younger at that position. Just younger on the defensive front 7 in general would be something that I would try to key in on. So some alternative options to Sue and to McClendon. That Sheldon Richardson, I feel like would fit. He's at least a little bit younger. He's still in his 30s. There's not a lot of free agents that aren't like that are young at this position. Usually those guys get signed, but that Fadakazi guy, he's 26 from the Jets. He's a good run defender. He would make sense for that system as well. And then you got JPP is going to be gone. I think that honestly, Shaq with Joe Tryon and Anthony Nelson, that's a good trio of edge players going into next year. I think that's totally cool. And I think at linebacker with Devin White, Levante David, KJ Britt, that's cool too. And Cam Gill also in the mix. I think those players are kind of underrated. I'd keep that intact. I just look to get younger on the interior defensive line. Let Joe Tryon play more, see what you got in him, and have Shaq Barrett on the opposite side. You got him signed. Defensively, and Jordan Whitehead I'd try to keep, but I'd rather have Carlton Davis. If I had to choose between one or the other, I'd rather have Carlton Davis. He's going to cost more, but having Carlton Davis would be big. I think Jamel Dean can play, and Sean Murphy-Bunting, you might want to upgrade from him, honestly, because he kind of had a dip in his play, and I'm not sure if he's ever going to get back to where he looked like he was progressing after the playoffs last year. They've got some money, though, with all these guys potentially leaving, Marpet retiring, Brady retiring. They could... I think they're going to most likely, like, I would let the tight ends leave, Fournette leave, Sue leave, Pierre-Paul leave, and try to re-sign your offensive linemen. Maybe even just Alex Kappa to a cheap contract. Then you could slide Robert Hainsey into center. He's not amazing, but he's not bad. You picked him in the 3rd round last year. Re-sign Carlton Davis, re-sign Jordan Whitehead, and get younger on defense. And Godwin, obviously. Godwin's number 1 priority. And let Fournette go. Let kind of those, like... The way that I look at the Bucs is, like, you want to keep those, like, primary positions intact. Like, the really essential positions of wide receiver, offensive line, edge rush, corner. Like, you want to maintain those players as much as you can. It's the other positions, like the icing on the cake, that you can kind of let go of. So interior defensive line, tight end, running back. Those are nice to have, but they're not essential to success. Let those guys go. Maintain, keep your money there and just get younger at those spots and try to find some guys through the draft and stuff like that. So that's how I view the Bucs. Try to keep your core younger players at the core positions. Move on from the older guys at the icing positions. And that's the way I would go. But Chris Godwin, man, you got to have Chris Godwin back. And then to finish the NFC South, the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are also a transitional team this year. And a transitional team this offseason. So we begin with the quarterback position as always. I would like to re-sign Jameis Winston. Now, as you guys see, the Saints are in the worst cap position of any team in the NFL, but they always seem to manage it quite well. They are minus $42 million, but through some little bit of magic from their front office, they'll figure out how to be plus money in no time. Now, quarterback, I'd like to get Jameis Winston back for another year, and then maybe you look to draft somebody down the road. But I think in this NFC South, a division that is not very good, is not very competitive, Tom Brady's gone. You probably have the best team if you bring back Jameis Winston, even though Sean Payton has left, which sucks. Now, Michael Thomas is a big question. Do you trade Michael Thomas? I would like to keep Michael Thomas if you could. But you might look to trade him if he doesn't want to play here anymore, and you could probably get some good assets to refill your team with. And that might be the way to go if you could. Because even though Michael Thomas is very good, this team needs some youth, and this team needs to get rid of some cap. So trading Michael Thomas might not be the worst thing in the world, even though he is a good player. Marquez Callaway is not a bad receiver, but he's certainly not really a number 2. type of receiver. So I think you look to draft receivers this season. Teron Armstead, it may suck, but you might have to let him go just because of how expensive he's going to be. But at least you've got Eric McCoy, Ruiz, and Ramczyk on that offensive line. Tight end, I don't think you're really pressing to address, although it's not very strong. Alvin Kamara at running back, we'll figure out what happens there. You can bring back Mark Ingram as your backup. Don't think he was bad. Do you end up trading like Cameron Jordan or something? He's been a Saint for a long time, about a decade. Do you look to trade him to a contender that needs a pass rush boost? I don't know, just throwing it out there. David Onyemata is good, and I think he's going to be there, but Cameron Jordan's there, Shai Tuttle's there, Marcus Davenport. Your D-line is in good shape unless you look to trade somebody there. Demario Davis is getting a little bit older, another guy that you could potentially trade if you wanted to. The depth at linebacker isn't fantastic, but you've got younger players like Warner, who you drafted last year, and Zach Bond, who you drafted 2 years ago. They're not terrible players. Bradley Roby, I've heard they might restructure or cut. So then you would need a number 2 corner. It would be nice to keep Marcus Williams if you could. There's been a lot of buzz that he might leave. Malcolm Jenkins is older. I'm not sure how much longer he's going to play. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as your nickel corner is nice. But so I really view this as bring back Jameis first. Figure out what you're doing with Michael Thomas. They restructured him, according to Young Key in the chat. Thank you for that. So it does appear that he'll be back. So he'll be your number 1 receiver. Draft a number 2 receiver. And then you've got Teron Armstead at left tackle, who's probably going to have to leave just because of the money. But at least you'll be better at wide receiver. Try to manage the left tackle situation. And maybe you do trade one of your older defensive players, Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis. Try to get younger a little bit there, but Lattimore's your number 1 corner. They'll try to find a value free agent number 2, just as they do every year, like Bradley Roby was for them last year. They'll do the same thing. It would be nice to have Marcus Williams back if they could. I'm not sure. Quan Alexander's probably going to leave. So the way I see it, it's really just tough to evaluate the Saints in free agency because of their cap situation every year. So I think you've got to be able to walk the fine line of still remaining competitive and being decent because you know that you can maybe win this division, but you're not selling out to win a Super Bowl the way that you were the last couple of years. So trying to maybe move some money and move some players that are getting older to other teams, but then also maintaining some sort of semblance of decent, you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? So I think that just having Michael Thomas back will be big on offense, but defensively, they don't got to do a heck of a ton. It's arguably the best defense in the NFL last year. Trying to re-sign Marcus Williams is the big priority on defense. And then offensively, number 2 receiver and finding a replacement at left tackle. Adding to the receiving core, tight end, all that sort of stuff would be nice to have. But a lot of it's going to come through the draft because of their free agency number, and their cap's probably not going to be fully solved during free agency. So just as it happened last year, like with Bradley Roby and Quan Alexander, and I believe they signed the nickel corner, Brian Poole, all this stuff kind of happened in July and August, which is late, but eventually it happened. And that's probably, for Saints fans, it's going to have to happen that way again, honestly. But they don't have a ton of free agents. They don't. So we'll see what happens. But that's the Saints, and that's the NFC South.